Good morning, everyone. This meeting is called to order. Ms. Truman, has anyone signed up for public comment? Thank you very much. Good morning, Ms. Miller.
Good morning, sir.
How are we today?
Very well, thanks.
Good. We have no cases to reconsider under agenda item 3. Is that correct?
Correct, no cases.
Move to tax liability cases under agenda item 4. No tax cases on docket 33.
Correct, no cases.
No fair housing cases.
That's right, sir.
All right. Under agenda item 6, we have no wage claim cases on docket 33 pulled for additional discussion.
Correct, none pulled for discussion, but you should have received the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 33.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining wage claim cases on docket 33.
I second the motion, except for those cases of which I'm dissenting as reflected on the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 33.
I concur with the chairman's motion, except for the cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected in the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 33.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted.
Thank you.
Let's move to agenda item 7, consideration of unemployment insurance cases on docket 33. Please proceed when you're ready.
Case number 2881003, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision should be set aside. The AT decision ruled on a redetermination that was issued more than 14 days after the original determination that qualified the claimant. Since there was no jurisdiction over the redetermination, it should be voided. However, the commission should assume jurisdiction over the employer's timely appeal from the initial determination. On the merits, the claimant went on a leave of absence to quarantine to avoid transmitting COVID to his terminally ill spouse. The claimant did not return to work when his leave was over because he was the only person available to care for his terminally ill spouse. The claimant should be qualified to receive benefits under section 207.046A3 of the Act. Set aside the AT decision, void determinations dated 8/25/20, valid claim, reinstate the determination dated 5/8/20, and modify no voluntary leave, no chargeback due to terminally ill spouse.
I agree with Commissioner Alvarez. The claimant quit to care for his spouse. Since the record suggests that the claimant's separation was due to his terminally ill spouse, the claimant should be qualified under section 207.046A3 of the Act, and the employer's account should be protected from chargeback. Therefore, we should set aside the appeal tribunal decision and void the August 25th, 2020 determinations. Should then modify the May 8th, 2020 determination. No voluntary leaving, no chargeback, separation due to terminally ill spouse.
I concur with Commissioner Alvarez.
Thank you. We have a unanimous decision.
Case number 2946380, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision is not supportable. This is similar to a series of cases in which the employer was not told on chargeback notices that it could have dealt with its claim volume problem by simply sending TWC a spreadsheet of all the notices that it needed to protest. The dates in this case coincide with the height of the pandemic during the time frame in which claimants, employers, and TWC were all overwhelmed by the volume of claims, appeals, and related proceedings. If the employer had had proper information, it could have responded to the claim notice on time. However, because the late protest in this case was a notice of an initial claim, the claimant's benefits rights are at stake. The claimant did not attend the AT hearing. Because of the unusual nature of this case, we should have this case resubmitted following an analysis by the Office of General Counsel regarding the due process issues potentially at stake when a claimant's benefits rights may be affected by finding of a timely protest to a notice of initial claim under the circumstances in this type of case.
The decision is correct. The employer did not timely file their protest because they were dealing with multiple claims. This is not an exemption to the timeliness rules. It would be impossible for TWC to provide every individual who interacts with our agency every potential method and manner of responding. Finding an exception in situations where some additional information from TWC might have produced a different response is not reasonable. Affirm the AT, no timely protest, no misconduct.
Reverse the AT, timely protest, resubmit.
We will resubmit the case.
Case number 2964857, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision is not supportable. This is another in a series of cases in which the employer was not told of the notice on the notice of maximum potential chargeback that it could have dealt with its claim volume problem by simply sending TWC a spreadsheet of all of the NMPCs that it needed to protest. The dates in this case coincide with the height of the pandemic during the time frame in which claimants, Employers in TWC were all overwhelmed by the volume of claims, appeals, and related proceedings. If the employer had had the proper information, it could have responded to the chargeback notice on time. Regarding the chargeback issue, Merritt's testimony concerning the work separation is available. So the case should be resubmitted with information concerning why the claimant stopped working for the base period employer. Accordingly, we should reverse the AT decision on the timeliness issue. The employer filed a timely response to the chargeback notice and then resubmit the case on the work separation and chargeback issues.
The AT decision should be affirmed. Commission records reflect that the employer opened the notice of maximum potential chargeback one day after it was issued. The protest was filed late due to the employer's own internal staffing shortages, and there was insufficient evidence that the protest was delayed due to the pandemic. Since there is no good cause exemption to the timeliness rules, the employer's protest was untimely.
Reverse the AT, timely response to the NMPC resubmit.
We will resubmit the case.
Case number 3104348, Commissioner Alvarez.
This case should be reheard for testimony on the timeliness issue. The claimant's appeal to the commission stated that he had been hospitalized, and upon release from the hospital, the lock on his mailbox had been changed. Because the claimant alleges delayed receipt of the agency document from circumstances beyond his control, we should rehear this case for evidence on the timeliness issue.
We should dismiss the claimant's appeal to the commission. The claimant's appeal was one day late. As there is no good cause exception to the timeliness rules, the claimant's appeal is not timely, and we do not have jurisdiction to consider the underlying merits. Thus, we should dismiss the claimant's appeal to the commission and leave the underlying AT decision in full force and effect.
Read here.
And I would like to go back to the second case, this is 29463. And okay, let me repeat. Going back to the second case, case number 2946380. I'd like to confirm your vote, Mr. Chairman. You said resubmit, but were you agreeing to the OGC memo as requested?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Case number 3181226, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. The claimant suffered a back injury and was unable to work beginning March 3rd, 2022. The claimant saw a doctor and was told continuing to perform the job would make his injury worse. The claimant attempted various leave options, but was not being paid while out. As the claimant was stopped working and was not being paid as a result of the injury, the claimant was separated at the time and is eligible for benefits due to MVI. The employer's account should be protected from charge. Modify the AT, no voluntary leaving, no charge back MVI.
Agree with Commissioner Alvarez.
I concur with Commissioner Alvarez.
Thank you. We have a unanimous decision.
Case number 3184619, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision is not supportable. Per the employer's testimony, the claimant was discharged for alleged discourteous conduct towards a customer. The employer has not provided testimony of any specific act of misconduct. The employer has also had no firsthand evidence in the AT hearing. The claimant credibly testified that he was performing his job when a lady approached him. She became irate when the claimant could not provide her with the information about property taxes since her name did not match the name on the deed records. As a result, she complained to the company with whom the employer contracts. The employer failed to establish any misconduct by the claimant by credible or persuasive evidence. Reverse the AT, no misconduct, chargeback.
We should affirm the AT decision. The employer's policy prohibited unsatisfactory behavior and conduct at the workplace. The claimant was discharged when he violated the employer's policy by dumpster diving and having a verbal altercation with the resident during work time. Since the record shows that the claimant was previously warned about his workplace conduct and thereafter violated the employer's policy by behaving in an unprofessional manner at the workplace, the claimant's conduct constituted mismanagement of his position of employment and was misconduct connected with the work. Hence, we should affirm the AT decision. Misconduct, no chargeback.
Affirm the AT, misconduct, no chargeback.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 319-2351, Commissioner Dimerson.
We should grant a rehearing in this case. The employer brought several witnesses to the hearing, yet the AT did not question these witnesses and did not ask the primary representative if she had any questions for them. In addition, both the employer and the claimant indicated that they had submitted additional documents prior to the hearing, but this documentation was not addressed by the AT. Because the record was not adequately and sufficiently developed, we should rehear this case for testimony from the employer's witnesses who were present at the AT1 and to admit the parties' additional documents into the record and take additional testimony about these documents.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant provided plausible testimony that she was servicing a reasonable number of customers per day. And she also gave plausible testimony that her travel mileage was lower than that of other employees as she had a more compact service territory. There is no evidence that the claimant was ever given any quotas in terms of customer service visits or travel mileage, nor did she ever receive any formal disciplinary warnings. Therefore, the employer failed to establish that the claimant was discharged for misconduct connected with the work. Affirm the AT, no misconduct, charge back.
Rehear.
We will rehear the case. And that was the last UI case pulled for additional discussion on docket 33. You should have received the UI short form dissent list for docket 33.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining UI cases on docket 33, except for those cases on which I am dissenting, as reflected on the UI short form dissent list for docket 33.
Commissioner, you have anything before I second? the
No,
motion?
I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
I second the motion except for those cases in which I'm dissenting as reflected on the UI short form dissent list for docket 33.
Thank you. And I concur with the chairman's motion, except for the cases on which I'm dissenting is reflected in the UI short form dissent list for docket 33.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a short break.
No, I only have one person. I'm calling my team. It's like, where are they? What is it on? Okay. Is that Angie Button or? The Senate, okay. Ready.
This is agenda item 8, chapter 850 and chapter 856, vocational rehabilitation services proposed rules.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Demerson, and Mr. Cerna. For the record, Cheryl Fuller, Vocational Rehabilitation Division. Commissioners, before you today for your consideration for approval are proposed rule amendments to Chapter 850, Vocational Rehabilitation Services Administrative Rules and Procedures, and Chapter 856, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. The policy concepts for these proposed rules were approved by the Commission on April 18th and June 14th, 2022. The proposed amendments will adopt in Chapter 850 rules required by the Texas Labor Code, Chapter 352.104 for the monitoring and oversight of VR counselor performance and decision-making. They will amend Chapter 856 to adopt by rule standards governing the determination of rates paid for medical services provided under Texas Labor Code, Chapter 352. And they will amend both Chapter 850 and Chapter 856 to streamline, clarify, and more specifically align existing rule language with federal regulations based on both comments received during our most recent four-year rule review and on recent guidance from the Rehabilitation Services Administration. Staff recommends submitting the proposed rules for publication in the Texas Register for a 30-day comment period. Staff also requests the ability to make minor non-substantive changes to the document in order to comply with the publication requirements of the Texas Register and the Office of the Secretary of State. This concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Any comments or questions?
Thank you, Cheryl.
None here.
Is there a motion?
Chairman, I move that we approve the proposed rule amendments to 40 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 850 and 856, and post to the Texas Register for public comment as recommended by staff.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The motion carries.
Thank you.
So agenda item 9, we have one discussion paper here. This is the expansion of Texas Rising Star Early Childhood Conference. I think there were some other things on the agenda. Those have been postponed to a future commission meeting.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Cerner. For the record, Chris Nelson, Chief Financial Officer. On July 5th, the commission voted to approve the statewide initiatives packet for 2023 through 2025 as part of our budget within the legislative appropriation request. This morning, I have one addition to that budget request. The Texas Workforce Commission has been supporting a professional development conference for Texas Rising Star providers since 2016. This annual conference is for the professional development needs of Texas Rising Star early childhood caregivers. The event is available at a nominal registration fee, with TWC funds supporting most of the hotel and registration costs to allow participation by child care workers who otherwise could not afford to attend such an event. The current annual budget of $750,000 supports one event and up to 800 attendees. To support TRS program growth, staff recommends that beginning in fiscal year 2024, the commission annually dedicate $3 million to support 4 TRS early childhood educator conferences. Additionally, staff note that $20 registration fee charged to attendees is no longer adequate. Authorizing staff to change the fee would provide greater flexibility to ensure that the venue selected continue to honor early childhood educators as professionals while also offsetting some of the out-of-pocket expenses of attending a conference. Staff recommend that the commission increase the annual budget for the conference from $750,000 per year to $3 million for 4 conferences annually beginning in 2024, and authorize staff to assess an appropriate registration fee for future conferences. That concludes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
None here.
Is there a motion?
Chairman, I move that we increase the annual budget for the Texas Rising Star Early Childhood Conference to $3 million for 4 conferences annually, beginning in fiscal year 2024, and authorize staff to assess an appropriate registration fee for future conferences as recommended by staff.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The motion carries. This is agenda item 10, TWC Capital and Exceptional Items Appropriations Requests.
For the record, Chris Nelson, Chief Financial Officer again. The next 2 documents lay out the commission exceptional items to be considered as part of our LAR request. The first being our capital items. In the attachment are staff recommendations for necessary capital projects not already in our bill pattern. The first 2, the labor law case management system and the cash draw and expenditure reporting system, are the last 2 major systems to be upgraded and replaced as part of our long-term strategy to remove systems from our mainframe. Labor law would be funded with general revenue dedicated funds from our penalties and interest, also known as Fund 165. CEDAR would be funded primarily with federal funds, but does have a small general revenue component to support the skills grants that flow through that system. The customer care portal is a new case management system to help TWC provide better customer service across the various programs TWC administers using the main door concept for tracking customer interactions and service. This would be 100% federally funded across TWC's major programs. The Child Care Single Information Portal is to provide a single child care hub for the wide array of child care services available and would be 100% federally funded. The Telecenter Telecommunications project is to replace components of the Telecenter communications and performance monitoring systems they would all be federally funded. The Supply and Demand tool is to replace and upgrade TWC's LMCI website and information and would be dependent on receiving additional federal funds or some other source that would be applied for in the future. The AEL case management system is the last major case management system that needs to be updated, and this project is to upgrade that system. This would also be 100% federally funded. As part of the LAR, we need to rank exceptional items in the terms of agency priority. These projects have already been ranked based off staff priority. The commission could vote to change that, but they are laid out in staff priority. And that concludes my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on that item. On
Any
these
comments
items.
and questions on capital items?
None here, Chairman.
You want to do a motion there? Or you just want to do it all at the end?
Does this require a motion?
This would, yeah, if you
Yeah,
want to
okay.
approve these items,
Okay, I move that we approve the capital budget exceptional items in the priority sequence laid out by staff.
Just clarify your motion. Also, you got it. I answered my own question. Thank you, Commissioner.
You got it, Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved in second and we're unanimous.
Were you thinking of the sequence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
the next item is the other commission exceptional items. And for the record, Chris Nelson, Chief Financial Officer. The next document lays out the commission exceptional items to be considered as part of our LAR. These are listed in the order presented to me, but I will ask the commission to vote on which items to consider as part of our LAR and rank the priority as well. First is a pre-apprenticeship career pathways item laid out by Commissioner Alvarez. Second is an industry recognized apprenticeship item laid out by Chairman Daniel. Third is a jobs for education in Texas, or JET, increase laid out by Chairman Daniel. Fourth is a staff recommended exceptional item to add 6 FTEs for $325,000 per year to alleviate a backlog within the Civil Rights Division. Due to the current funding mechanism within the EEO program, staff have determined there are not enough resources to remove this backlog of cases without additional funds through an exceptional item. Fifth is a request to increase the state child care matching funds that pull down additional federal matching dollars for the child care program. The federal matching funds increased by $52 million in 2021. TWC projects to have sufficient state match in 2023 and 2024, but not enough in 2025 to pull down the additional federal funds. To help maintain TWC's number of children served, staff are asking if the commission would consider an exceptional item of $35 million to pull down the additional $52 million in federal funds in 2025. And then the sixth item is a request to increase the skills appropriation by Commissioner Alvarez. I would like to point out a clarification in the language. It notes a $27.3 million appropriation. I didn't catch that before publishing this. That actually includes that 27 million includes JET and capital. Once you remove that, the skills appropriation itself is about 19.1 million in 2022. And that's my apologies for not catching that before posting it. But that concludes my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or open it up to the commission.
All right. Comments or questions for Chris? Let's just open these up for general discussion. Let's go back to the start, and Commissioner Alvarez, just on the pre-apprenticeship career pathways, would you be willing to just sort of lay out kind of your general vision for that and how you think that might work?
You got it, Chairman. The Texas Education Code, Chapter 133 allows for pre-apprenticeship training leading to related classroom training for apprentices. Pre-apprentices place both youth and adults on a career pathway with built-in advancement to salaries to excess of $60,000 annually. Pre-apprenticeship programs provide students with stackable credentials, which is very important, upon completion which allows them to continue studies at the community college level. Registered apprenticeship training programs directly into a job. As we know that there are crosswalks between registered apprenticeship programs and colleges, and this is a really good way for students to get introduced to the trades. This initiative will support the higher education goals of the Texas 60 by 30, Texas Talent Strong, and the tri-agency work, and ensure students graduate with marketable skills and minimal student loan debt. This exceptional item request is for $2.5 million for 2024, serving 865 customers, and $5 million for 2025, serving 1,731 for a total of $7.5 million and a total customer served of 2,596. I would also ask that this request include a full-time staffer to assist with additional workload.
Questions?
So this, Chris, this exceptional item that's listed here, it doesn't have FTEs there, so we'd add one FTE into that category.
Yes, based on Commissioner's comments, we would add one FTE. If you approved, as he's laid out, we would add one additional FTE for each year in this request.
And if I may add, this was an exceptional item I requested the last session, in which we know last session we had a lot of interest in registered apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship, CTE programs. Felt like this was fitting for us to go ahead and reintroduce this initiative again.
So would this be just an increase to the chapter 133 funding functionally at the budget level? It's just how would this be?
Correction, let me look at this. Yes, it does allow, it is part of the 133. Yes, sir.
So in 24 and 25, we would just we would be requesting an increase to chapter 133.
That's correct. Of 7.5 million.
So this would be a specific service allowable within chapter 133.
So I saw this in principle. I see where this is beneficial. I'm a little concerned about the fact that all of the chapter 133 lays out 3 categories of training. This would seem to go into the preparatory training category, except chapter 133 seems to have a restriction on that everyone participating in chapter 133 funds have signed an apprenticeship agreement with an apprenticeship committee. Is that your vision for this, that these would be people who have signed their apprenticeship contract but still have access to schools, so we would pay for education? I'm not clear on how that would work.
Well, first of all, this would be the first time we've ever funded pre-apprenticeship. So it's different than registered apprenticeship. So I don't know if that makes anything.
My question is that 133 has very specific constructs for how the money gets spent. It doesn't seem to contemplate any money being spent on someone who's not already enrolled in an apprenticeship program by having signed an apprenticeship agreement. And I'm not able to see any latitude statutorily for spending money outside that framework, even for something I agree with. So I'm not exactly sure how the money would get spent via chapter 133 on someone just who's at the interest level. In other words, they would have already had to have signed up.
So if I'm not mistaken, both of us or all 3 of us have attended MC3 training programs with Tamara Atkinson. Am I not correct? And if I'm not mistaken, this would fund the MC3. So it's there is no guarantee that these individuals that receive this funding would actually have direct entry to an apprenticeship program. It gives them exposure and it allows them to receive a credential while they're in that 3-week course, 4 weeks, depending on how they design it. But I do know that Tamara Atkinson, Paul Fletcher, and some in our Houston area with Juliet, they have all taken advantage. And this unfortunately is not covered by us. It's covered by someone else, maybe a private employer. But in this particular case, this would be an exception allowing us to be able to pay for pre-apprentices in these types of programs. This is just really basic training.
Chairman, let me ask a question. So it sounds like you're asking the ability to spend this money. And Commissioner Alvarez, you're saying this is new. It's a pre-apprenticeship program. If this is something that we've put forward in the past, I wonder if those questions have already been addressed. And if anyone on the staff or anybody has an answer to the question that's been posed, do we have the ability to use this program for this pre-apprenticeship?
Good morning, Carrie Ballas, Workforce Development Division. Typically, in response to your question, Chairman, in LEAs, local education agencies or apprenticeship committees building apprenticeship programs as we know them in Chapter 133, we are able to use as that mechanism referred to as preparatory instruction. And what this typically is that the LEA or the committee begins to look at their next pool or crop of apprentices. So this is part of the recruitment, is part of building that next class, so to speak. What they often do to make sure that they have the right individuals for their program is they will create pre-apprenticeship programs in which, number one, they might do a math class aligned with the industry that they are going into that program with. Now, the understanding is that that individual will finish that pre-apprenticeship and move directly into the apprenticeship program. They've kind of been watched closely. They've met the quality standards that that employer's looking for, that committee's looking for, and they're just beginning that pipeline. It is very likely, and we see this at any year in the apprenticeship, that there might be individuals who at the end of that pre-apprenticeship, that first year, their second year, it's not a good fit and they rotate out of that registered apprenticeship program. But in this world, the individual enters with the agreement that on the end of the training, they are employed and then they're moving into their first year of apprenticeship.
But they do sign an agreement.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that meets, yeah. If they're signing an agreement with, I guess, either the LEA or the apprenticeship committee,
Yes.
then that would meet the requirements for Chapter 133, even for the preparatory training
Yes, sir.
funds.
And
So those agreements, they don't have any kind of clawbacks for the money that was spent that they don't complete the program.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I don't think there's a statutory requirement that we have that.
No, sir.
So in other words, they're duly admitted to they're considered having signed an agreement and they're considered an apprentice in that program. So really the only risk to us is that the non-completers sort of count against our numbers.
They do. And we, as you already know, being through this several years, we always at the end of each year have a little bit of an attrition rate.
I think
Okay.
that's to be expected.
Mhm.
I also wonder, and I doubt we've kept numbers on this because we really haven't probably looked at this as closely, but I would have to believe it at some level that having the ability to get more people in these agreements and into these kind of preparatory pre-apprenticeship type situations, that's more recruitment and it increases our chances for completers because we might get people we otherwise wouldn't have gotten.
That's it. Yes,
Would
sir.
we agree with that?
Yes.
Thank you, Gary.
That's
Thank
all the
you.
questions I have.
Okay.
So just a recommendation, back in 2016, when we were asked to meet with stakeholders around the state, talking about how we could increase that pipeline of aging tradesmen, how do we encourage students to be involved in CTE programs? Texas was last when it came to apprentices. We were last in producing the number of apprentices. As of Friday, and of course, conversations we've had with Department of Labor and yesterday's conversation that we had with those that are serving on this new task force that the DOL has, Texas is number one. And it's innovative ways like this that make us that. back in 2016, we were encouraged by stakeholders to provide some type of pre-apprenticeship programs that would encourage students to get into these types of occupations. And if it allows a $7.5 million investment on the part of TWC, I don't see why this would be, why we would have, this is why we would not want to support something like this when it was part of the tri-agency. It was part of the tri-agency language that we TWC along with the two other agencies create some type of pre-apprenticeship programs. And if I'm not mistaken, we're the only ones doing that. I mean, we've had discussions with the other agencies and we are leading this, and discussions that we've had with legislators. Why aren't we supporting more pre-apprenticeship programs, regardless of where the funding comes or how we do it? This is a really good way. Again, there's no guarantee that these individuals would go that career path, but it certainly gets them motivated into this type of occupation, which we seem to have obstacles and we seem to have issues trying to encourage people to go into the trades.
Commissioner Alvarez, I think you've laid it out, and Chairman had a question. I think Carrie's addressed that question for me, the ability to use it. And so I think it's a good initiative.
The other question this is a procedural question. I think the premise here is sound. I definitely think there's some use for this. I'm thinking about how the General Appropriations Act operates. So we're basically asking for the biennium a $7.5 million increase to the Chapter 133 funds that we otherwise. Does this exceptional item, does the discussion of using it for pre-apprenticeship, does it act as the appropriate sort of, I hate to use this word, but it's the only word I can think of, the appropriate earmark that money would be dedicated to pre-apprenticeship activities? And let's say we didn't have that many, I don't know why we wouldn't, but let's say we didn't have that many, would we be able to use that for other Chapter 133 activities once we evaluated the need for pre-apprenticeship type
Correct. So
programming?
Chairman, I believe it would show up in our apprenticeship strategy. So you would just see if this got approved and signed by the governor next summer, you would see an increase to our apprenticeship appropriation. In our accounting system, well below that, we would track this as you kind of use the term earmarked, as we'd have specific line items identifying what we expect the uses of this to be. But since it's all within the same appropriation, I believe TWC would be able to, in a sense, move from this to something else if these funds did not get utilized.
So I mean, I'm presuming we would operate on good faith here, and in the first year, the additional 2.5 million that might potentially be there, depending on the legislature's action, we would attempt to do that for pre-apprenticeship. At such point as we didn't, we would then just fund sort of general Chapter 133.
We
At
would
2.5 million, I don't
Right.
in any way think it's not going to be fully subscribed, but if for some reason it weren't.
That's correct.
And even in do we have UB authority on Chapter 133 funds?
We do not.
We do not. So we would have to do it. We'd have to do it in that fiscal year.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Let me remind everyone that we have major companies coming into this great state of ours, Samsung, others who have approached the offices saying, we need folks to clear the land so that we can start construction. Well, who do you think is going to do that? It's going to take individuals that are going through these MC3 and multi-craft curriculum courses that are going to be doing that. And these are entry-level certifications that Tamara, Paul Fletcher, and some of those folks in the surrounding area are certifying through these programs. And so this money would allow us to be able to assist those individuals that are going in there. Because if I'm not mistaken, with the conversations I've had with Ed and the folks at Samsung, I mean, they're looking at thousands of people, laborers. You got to have some type of certification to get there. And this MC3 model allows them to be on the site, to clear the land, to help the construction folks there. And if they pursue their education by going into an apprenticeship program or a community college, by all means, they're welcome to do that. I just wanted to put that on the record because, again, there's no reason why we should be limited on the number of individuals that we're training as a result of not enough funding. This is a perfect resource for us to be able to assist our boards with that.
Hey, are the MC3 programs, are they aligned with the LEAs or the apprenticeship committees? Do you know?
Yes.
They are. they're part of it. Okay.
Mhm. Actually, we would love to get them on that IBC list, and that's on the record as well. Right now, we have NCCER, but there's no reason why we couldn't allow schools to make that determination if the MC3 model fits better than the NCCER model fits. But we'll work on that.
I don't have any other questions on this one. Can we take these up at the end, just one by one to vote? We'll go through them and answer questions on them, just in the order that they're listed here. The next one is one that I proposed, that this is the Irat program that was passed in the 2019 legislative session. We did rules for it later in 2019 here. So we've had both the statute and the rules on the books since 2019. We didn't ask for an exceptional item to fund this particular industry recognized apprenticeship program in the last session due to some COVID issues that we were facing. I think very much in keeping with Commissioner Alvarez's comments in terms of the need for skilled workers of all sorts. I think this is another tool in our toolbox that lets us train apprenticeships. This particular program's well laid out in statute. I went back and reviewed our regulation on this. Our rules are laid out orderly and in accordance with the statute, and the money that we might request here, I would just simply assume would run, staff would run in accordance with the rules that are already on the books. Be happy to entertain any questions.
You want to go, Commissioner Demerson?
I'll go ahead and ask. So this legislation at House Bill 2784, I guess Speaker Phelan,
Yes.
the team pushed that forward. I have a statewide initiative that I'm pushing forward in regards to this. I may pull it if we're going in this direction. I'm not sure just yet. The question I have in regards to the legislation when it was passed during the 86 Texas legislative session, did they have a budgeted amount at that time, and then or did they allocate FTEs at that time? At all? Nothing at all. Okay. And so the 20 million that we're looking at right now for an exceptional item, is that in line with what they would want, this industry would want?
So I discussed it with the staff, the bill author staff, within the last couple of weeks, explained what my interest was here, explained what the dollar amounts were. It would be inappropriate to say that they were supportive. They were certainly not opposed. They are not really supporting any appropriations request by agencies. And that is the position I would have encouraged them to take. They did ask some questions, and the answers were simply, this is a dollar amount I think that's supportable. It's sort of on par with what we do relative to skills. It's a dollar amount that I think can be spent. It didn't seem to raise any objections from them. Again, I don't think the Speaker's office at this point is supporting any one appropriations request over another, and I don't want to leave that impression. But they expressed no concern to me, nor any sort of concern that they might want me to change something. So I think the dollar amounts in keeping with within some realm of comfort for them. What they actually support, I don't know. What they might encourage me to do, I don't know. They didn't say.
No other question.
You know, throughout the years, when we're not in session, we have an opportunity to meet with our legislators when they're at JET grant presentations or other presentations that we invite them to. And so just as an FYI, the items that we have brought forth from my office are from discussions that we've had with legislators that are very interested on, just like you, Chairman, meeting with these individuals that sit on various committees. We as well do the same. And we've been very successful in the past with some of the rollouts that we've been able to introduce. I do have some questions, and I was honored to be at S&B Infrastructure. And I think that was your first official event, Commissioner Demerson, as a commissioner, when the signing of House Bill 2784, which is a great initiative.
Governor Abbott was at that event.
Governor Abbott was there meeting with the members of Senate of S&B Infrastructure, where this was actually where we had that stakeholder meeting. Again, the term of pre-apprenticeship was in the discussion. For clarification purposes, I want to make sure that we're not asking for 4 FTEs on this, right? We're asking for 2.
That's correct. It's 2 per year.
Okay.
It didn't, the 4 subtotal is not necessary on this document. The FTEs.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Without input from staff, the team who is expected to execute this initiative, who's expected to initiate this initiative, execute it?
My assumption it would be Carrie Ballas's team that also does the apprenticeship program.
Okay. I like the idea. I'm just not crazy about the amount. Again, with conversations that I've had with folks as well. Well, I applaud this effort. I believe we can risk of not fulfilling our objective to customer serve because staff may already have too much on their plate. But if you're saying we've had this discussion, I'm assuming that they'd be able to take it on. If we were to decrease the amount, I'd be willing to support it. Although we like to go big, we should take measures smaller, measured steps, especially since we have not done something like this before. A smaller amount for a pilot would make more sense. If we are having trouble getting employers to apply for TIP high demand and skills grants, which I'm hearing, I am not sure at this time it's the right time for us to be taking this large undertaking. Moreover, apprenticeship team is working on apprenticeship expansion efforts, healthcare apprenticeship and other projects. Those are my comments for right now.
Mr. Chairman, have you heard from industry an amount?
I haven't heard an amount, just
Okay.
general support for the
Yes,
concept.
yeah, support's out there.
Yeah.
Big time. I think the amount.
There's not an amount. It
Okay.
varies. It just
Okay.
depends on how you talk.
Okay.
I think it's a great initiative, great concept. I'm just not in agreement with the amount, but again, we're going to be bringing these up and I guess we're going to be taking.
We'll come back
Mhm.
and take them up
That's fine.
individually. This next one is jobs. Make sure we're through here.
And,
Jobs and education for Texas rather. Essentially, functionally, this would double the amount of the appropriation. That's what the request would do. For JET, we have exceeded that in every program year that I've looked at since we have had it here at TWC. I see that we have exceeded applications have exceeded the number of applications that we could fund in every year that we've had it. Some of those years it was double. COVID years look a little bit different. I think they presented a challenge across the board. This last year, we had an additional $50 or so million from TEA, and we used all of it in the first year. That was primarily ISDs, charter schools, Wyndham School District. Lots of demand at the high school level. Community colleges used all 7.5 million this last year. In the next fiscal year, we'll revert back to 7.5 million total. The current split, and you'll see this coming up in a future item today on the agenda. We've been splitting 50-50, 60-40. I think that the advisory committee's request is to split it 60-40, which would push ISDs back to around 3.2, 3.5 million when they got just somewhere right around 50 million this year. So lots of demand here, lots of demand at both the community college and the high school level, including charter schools and Wyndham School District, and an opportunity for us to expand a program with a proven track record for demand, where it often applications almost always exceed the number of dollars that we're able to award at the end of the time. Staff's done a remarkable job, in my opinion, of putting in place a promotion plan for this and talking to the schools. And I think staff's done an exceptional job of putting in place some new mechanisms to communicate, two-way communication with schools. And I think that's showing up in the demand for the program. So very timely. If we vote, depending on how we vote later today, a great increase in the participation in this program, and one that numerically, if you chart it out over the last 5 or 6 fiscal years, one that you'll see the demand continues to grow. I think this last year, with this influx of one-time money from TEA, I think we saw exactly what the program can do if funded in a larger amount. This is, of course, in talking to the legislature, I think every exceptional item is carefully considered. I would consider this a modest request, although it is doubling the program, but I think there's definitely demand. I think we can continue to do good work with it. Any questions?
Chairman, the fact that enough interest was generated to allocate the additional 50 million we received from TEA for JET, I could support this request. This is an extremely popular grant program. It is in its early years, the OAI team did a great job of marketing outreach and educating entities on how to apply.
Full support of the initiative. I had the pleasure and privilege of being able to operate that program. And so it is the Jobs and Education for Texans program. So let's make that clarification on the top. The Jobs in Education for Texas versus Jobs for Education in Texas, unless we're changing it.
No, I don't think we're changing.
Okay, all right. So Jobs and Education for Texans is proper.
Accountants aren't the greatest at grammar. That's my apologies.
We're good, great
There
program.
weren't enough numbers in it for Chris, and so it
Didn't make a
it became
difference.
confusing.
You get the point.
All right, there's no questions.
Mm-mm.
The next one's civil rights. This is a staff recommended exceptional item. So
Mhm.
Chris,
So I've laid out already, if I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. I don't have any other comments than what I stated earlier, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any at this time for this one.
Sufficiently briefed and appreciate the briefing.
childcare. Any
So
questions on
any-
childcare? This is just simply a pull down.
That's
additional
correct. So
federal
the additional 35 million would bring down the additional 52 for basically an increase childcare funding by, 87 million total, which we would put into direct care to help
Yep.
maintain the number of children served.
Got it. And then skills development fund, Commissioner Alvarez.
Yes, sir. Skills development is funded by state general revenue dollars. In the last biennium, the state legislator funded skills at 54 million. TWC requests an additional 50 million in general revenue to support DF and dual credit grant programs. This exceptional item request is for 25 million for 2024, serving 12,500 customers, and 25 million for 2025, serving 12,500 customers, for a total of 50 million, and a total customer served of 25,000 people.
So, Commissioner Alvarez, you're asking for an additional 50 million in addition to what we have here. And you feel you're asking for an additional 50 million. And is that, what's the demand of that program? Are we overused in that program as well? Is that demand out there? Is staff going to be able to get an additional $50 million out to our Texas colleges and
I don't know. We have Mary here. She might be able to answer that question. Mary, if you don't mind making your way up to the podium.
because I vaguely heard
No, I
you
agree.
say something in regards to the ability to utilize the programs that we have right now.
That's a good
And
question.
we're doing a good job with it,
Mhm.
but I want
Good
to make
question.
sure that if that demand's out there, then it's something good. If that demand is not, we need to know that.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mary York, the Director for Outreach and Employer Initiatives. Regarding your question, Commissioner Dimerson, we have seen a slight decline in Skills Development Fund applications, I think primarily as a result of the pandemic, as businesses have had to focus in other areas, or not been able to let their staff, away for training purposes. But we do see an uptick in those applications coming in. And I am committed to the team that they do a fantastic job of working with businesses to develop applications based on their need.
Okay.
And I'd be willing to negotiate, Commissioner.
Well, I'm at the privilege and pleasure again
Yes.
of running that program as well. And Ed, that point in regards to $50 million and making sure that we're utilizing it if we see that there's a need, because what we don't want to do is to have money allocated and having to give it back to the legislative body. And so
I agree.
I think a thorough conversation on that uptick, Mary, in regards and a realistic look at it. I mean, it's okay if we don't need it, then we are where we are. But if the need is out there, then let's realistically look at the numbers and not put ourselves in a position of asking for more than we can chew in that sense. So,
I agree.
okay.
I agree with you.
Are we turning people down?
At
Are
this
we
time-
running out of money? at the
No,
end?
we are not.
We're not running out of money at the end of the fiscal year. Are we, when I look at the expenditures, it strikes me that we spend about what we're getting. Is that fair? Is that accurate or is that budget math?
I think that that's accurate. You know, we are allocating all of the funds, but we are not turning anyone away.
Yeah. So demand is about equal to supply,
At this time, yes.
including with all of our outreach. I'm asking because this is a program I wholeheartedly support. I think this is one of our sort of key programs, including, you know, if you look at apprenticeship, if you look at skills, our ability to provide upskilling and reskilling in multiple different formats. You know, I think that is a real strength for TWC and something that a definite value add that we bring to the ability for companies to continue to create jobs in the state. And, you know, I don't want to air out all of our laundry here in this meeting, but the fact is we tend to finish each fiscal year in a kind of a flurry of skills development contracts to get those done so we can spend the money. But we are spending all the money regardless of kind of what our mechanism is for doing it. I think there's a couple reasons for that. One, we don't set a hard deadline. We kind of fund as we go, and as companies need the money, it's available to them. We don't set an annual deadline, and that's a programmatic function. That's an operations issue, and I'll leave that to you, that there might be ways to kind of fix the timing on when the money gets spent. I think for me, from a setting a policy here, you know, the money's getting spent, and I think staff's doing a really good job once again, as they are with JET, and I think as they are with some of our apprenticeship funds. I think they're doing a really good job of getting the word out to the people who could use that and get that done. I do, even though Commissioner Demerson, even though I think that demand and supply are kind of at some sort of equilibrium right now, you know, I'm watching the news every day. I'm seeing the amount just in semiconductors, the number of plants that are going in, not just here in Central Texas, but also in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. 2 new constructions that I'm aware of up in Sherman. And there's just going to be a lot of need for training. I think there's people that are going to cross over from other industries. And so, you know, I think there's a case to be made. I'm a little concerned here with the dollar amount. And I do think we need to fix kind of the language here in terms of what the appropriation is. We get about 19 million a year for skills development fund after we back JET out of that, and a couple other things that we're obligated to do, including dual credit, I think, which comes out of that fund as well. You know, I think if we were to say, you know, some reasonable amount of money, whatever that is, in terms of this is what we think semiconductors are going to do over the next 5 years, or if we knew that some other type of advanced manufacturing or some other type of job, I mean, it doesn't really matter to us if it's a high skill, high wage job, middle school, high wage job, any of those, I think they fall firmly into this category, and I think we could support that. So if in fact supply and demand are at equilibrium, you know, I think we can project out a little bit and look at some new things that are coming on the marketplace and probably justify that. Other than semiconductor, are you hearing from other employers in terms of a potential for increased need for training, or is it a generalized increased need for training?
I think based upon the growth that Texas is seeing in its business community, the attractiveness of the state as a place to expand or relocate, we're seeing a general need for training, a general need for a skilled workforce. So apart from, and I think rightly so, pointing out that very specific demand in the semiconductor space, I would argue that almost any sector is seeing growth and a need for additional workers with those specific skills.
I mean, we've been reading about some big brands that are wanting to expand their workforce just in the Austin area over the last 3 or 4 years, and I don't know how much of these particular issues have been settled yet, but I've seen a number of those brands make application for skills development funds. So it does strike me that more and more employers or potential employers are seeing this as an opportunity to really beef up the workforce here, which is good for the greater kind of ecosystem that they're operating in.
Yes. And I would also say, I think that we also have the opportunity to look at ways that we deploy those dollars for skills development fund moving forward, and seeing how we can make things easier for businesses, make that training happen more quickly, ensure that they have the workers that they need as those decisions are being made and they actually get those businesses off the ground.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd also like to add, Chairman, if I may, thinking of all the companies that are coming into Texas, like the expansion of LNGs in Brownsville, the expansion of SpaceX. Just the other day, having conversation with Senator Perry's office about a school district, which we've informed staff about a school district that owns the water rights to the community. That's where are they getting their training dollars? And I understand that we have hiccups when it comes to who is eligible for the funding. But in some particular areas, public seems to be the biggest employer in the community. There is a demand. I just don't think, I think what we've done with JET, as I mentioned in my remarks, that they've done a remarkable job of marketing that. I think we're doing the same thing with skills. And I understand that the amount might be a little high, but I still think that the amount or some type of addition to what they currently receive is warranted. Just what we're doing, conversations we're having with the Texas Water Development Board and how we can work together in partnership with them. There are some really big things that are happening, as you know, whether it's water, electricity, all this other stuff. And I think we need to be prepared. I mean, I think it's been stated in the past, we need to think big, and this certainly supports our dual credit programs as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Alvarez, I'm looking at this again, very supportive of the program and initiatives. I don't want staff to bite off too much, and then it can chew. 12.5 and 12.5 seems to work for me. Maybe half of that, you're going to 50 million. We used to have a $12 million allocation, 25 million per year back in the day. And so maybe look at those numbers when we go across the street, or whenever we have these exceptional items, you're going to have to back it up in regards to the demand and the like. And so 50 million, that's a lot of semiconductors, a lot of growth in Texas, a lot of training and the like. And this, our state's booming. We're doing a great job marketing the state. The business climate is good. Folks want to be here, but get a little bit more realistic in terms of the numbers and what we'll have to defend. If asking for these exceptional items, we need to be prepared to do that. If it exists, then that's fine. If we know that these things are out there, or if our gut feeling or research or anything that we have is indicating that, then let's go for it. But 12.5 and 12.5 per year allow staff to really add another close to $15 million there that might allow them to get out. If we're wildly successful with it, then we come back again. Also, the innovation that we talked about, I think that's something that's good that we've done it one way for a number of years. And if there's anything that we can do to really meet the needs that are out there, are asking the questions and finding out if meeting the needs of those employers and the like, and the type of training that they need, and if we can do anything innovatively, then let's take advantage of doing just that. But that's my comments. Full support of the initiative here. The dollar amount kind of stands out only because I know what we've had to do in the past to get the money out, and don't want us to take on too much in that regard. So my comments.
I would, if I were you, Mary, I would punt this next question to Chris, but you're standing there, so I'm going to ask it. I have one additional concern. Support the program. Think it's probably ripe for a little bit of an expansion. Can certainly justify those things. In terms of setting a dollar amount, I noticed that another item on today's agenda would be riders for the agency. One of those riders that we would be proposing is to that we're requesting and hoping to get unexpended balance authority between fiscal years of the biennium for TWC with regard to the Skills Development Fund. Having been on sort of both sides of this issue, if I were a legislative person, I would be concerned about an agency asking for a fairly large dollar increase at the same time they're asking for UB authority. I think there'd be a lot of questions there. Have we thought through maybe what the answers to those questions might be?
Not completely. You are correct. I think with the, historically with the skills, and then once we got JET, they're both general revenue funded. So we have no inherent UB authority to move any unexpended balances forward. And typically what we see at the end of as you stated, at the end of the year, there's this flurry of activity of going through the procurement process, whether it's an RFA or not, the contracting process, there's this scramble to get everything committed by August 31st, so we don't lapse anything. So the rider was intended to help alleviate that, not that we would, in a sense, want to punt anything into the next year. We would still want to be, have the goal of committing all the funds for that given year. But if it bleeds into September or something like that, we're, staff aren't killing themselves to try to get a contract executed by August 31st. But you do bring up a good point that if you're requesting funds at the same time, you're asking for UB authority, there could be a kind of a skeptical eye of, is there some other, are these two things joined together? And I would say they're not joined together. One, the request for funds would be an increase to service delivery. The UB authority is just to help the contracting function so that we're committing everything, but we're not pushing things beyond what they can more timely be done. But we would have to kind of, as we explain this, make sure that these two are not related to each other, that these are two inherent separately requests, and there is nothing that joins the two is probably how we would want to frame it.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked that question because I was going to ask you the same thing on UB authority for the IRAPs if we didn't use all 50 million.
So the way the rider is laid out in this package that we'll talk about in a minute is specific to the skills and the JET appropriations. So if the IRAP funding would not have that unless you specifically requested we add that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
None here?
All right, let's do this. So we got 3 things we need to do. We need to figure out which of these we want. We need to figure out what the dollar amounts are on what we'd like to request. And then we need to put these in priority order. So let's do, just for ease of considering this, is there any item on here that someone objects to that we need to take a vote on? Or do we feel like all of these items should be exceptional items?
I'm okay with the exceptional items with the exception of the amounts.
Okay with the
Good.
exceptional items.
All right, on pre-apprenticeship career pathways, so it's laid out at 2.5 million in fiscal 24, 5 million in fiscal 25, 7.5 million for the biennium. Do we want to make any adjustments there?
Not me.
I think except for your request for the
FT.
One FTE.
FTE.
Yeah, I've got that noted
Okay.
here. All right, on IRAPs, we've got 20 million in fiscal 24, 20 million in fiscal 25 with a total of 40 million.
Do you have any thoughts on the dollar amount? Lower than the 40 million?
I think 40 is appropriate.
Personally, I think that's a little high considering this is gonna be a first time. I'd be willing to negotiate to 5 million per year. I just don't think we're gonna get that money out. Along with some of the other programs, especially in 2024. That would be really a lot of work
Yeah.
for us to get employers. I mean, we have to explain, we have an issue right now explaining to employers what IRAPs are, pre-apprenticeship is, even this agency has issues sometimes identifying what the distinction is between the three. I can tell you that's going to be a challenge. I'd be willing to go and negotiate. I think it's a win-win if we roll this out. I know you had asked for that, Commissioner Demerson, on your statewide initiative.
Yeah, my statewide initiative, I think is, what's the dollar amount on it? About 600,000 or something?
Yeah, yours
in
wasn't
the
even a
pack.
million.
Yeah, it's low, and that's
Mhm, it was
yeah,
500 for
so
two-
about
a
$1
year.
million or what have you. A smaller amount for sure, but that's just kind of based on conversations with some of the folks in the industry wanting to get something out. I was pleased to see this exceptional item coming forward at a larger amount, and so I just kind of want to know the dollar amounts, so that we make sure that what we're asking for, again, going across the street asking for exceptional items is always something that, you know, we're careful about in that sense. And so the dollar amounts, if we can justify it, that's what I want to make sure that we're solid with that, and the industry's behind us in that regard. So when
Kristen, we're
talking,
getting UB authority, right?
Say again,
We're getting UB authority on this?
no, not on this.
not
on
unless
this?
you specifically request that we add it to the riders.
Okay.
So do we think 5 million a year is sufficient? I think staff can do better than that, but if that's all we think they can do.
No, I think half of what we have here works 10.
10 and 10.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you've had conversations, you've been
10 and
looking at
10,
it,
10
so-
and 10 for a total of 20, I think works for me.
No, I agree with that. I think, yeah, based on what we have here, one asking for 20, and what I've heard from both of you gentlemen in regards to apprenticeship and the needs that are out there, I think we're serving a good model and opportunity to take care of business here.
I would have certainly agreed to 10 and 10 for a total of 20 for the biennium.
All right, I'm solid here.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
On jet, 7.5 for each of the 2 fiscal years for a total of 15 million for the biennium. Any concerns?
None.
None here, Chairman.
Civil rights at 650,000 for the biennium, the 6 FTEs. So that more or less becomes permanent. What do we do when we get through the backlog?
So this would just be for the biennium. I think it would not be a request to increase our,
Not for the baseline.
yes.
Okay, got it. Any concerns, questions?
None here,
No.
Chairman.
Childcare, pretty self-explanatory. 35 gets you 52. Those are
Yes,
not
that-
Vegas odds. That's a pretty good opportunity to pull down federal money. Yeah.
And part of this projection is, we had the FMAP rate determines how much match we have to come up with. We had everybody had a favorable FMAP rate during the COVID years. That is projected to basically decrease, which
Right.
increases the amount of match we have to come up with, which is the other predicament that we see ourselves in.
Right. All right. And then skills development fund.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Demerson on the 12.5 for the yearly for 2 years.
As I mentioned it, so I'm good with that.
Excuse me, Commissioners, just one quick thing.
Mhm.
On this last item, the Skills Development Fund, I would request that staff be allowed to determine if we need additional FTEs to support any kind of an expansion of that. If we can, it wouldn't be a large number, but you'd still need to include something in the exceptional item. We would not change the amount that you all agree to, but we would necessarily may need to add 1 or 2 FTEs in order to execute that.
I'm all for that. Again, having run the program, you need a team to do the work. And so I have no problems with that.
And the staff would be for contract management, outreach, of course, is what we're talking.
Yeah, no, we want to make sure it's appropriate staff because we need to be successful here. I mean, what are we talking about? 1 FTE, maybe 2 FTEs?
Probably no more than 2.
Yeah.
I would like for us to at least be able to get some numbers. Right now, it's dashed out, and if it's okay with the author, we'd like to be able to include them.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
I'm
either.
okay with that.
So on all of these exceptional item requests, will staff needs to go through these and make sure the fundamental facts are correct, make sure the FTE counts are correct, and make sure that our rationales are correct. So for example, I'm asking that this language on chapter 133 for pre-apprenticeship, I'm asking that it be cleared up and we present a more direct case. I like the argument about the MC3 programs. I like the tie back to the local education agencies and the apprenticeship committees. And I think that the legislature would want to know those things. I think there's a good story to tell there. And I'd really like to see that reflected in this exceptional item request. We will get a chance to talk about this, but it will be the description will be read way more often than our verbal explanation of things are
Right.
going to happen. Yeah. Same thing on the IRAPs, you know, if we need to go through and sort of clean this up in terms of making our case and which industries, you know, we definitely have several days to get that done. I don't think that's huge. Jet, as straightforward as this is, let's let staff give this an additional reading and make sure that we still agree with this. Civil rights, childcare, we're pretty straightforward. And then on the skills one, these dollar amounts need to be fixed because there's jet money included in the skills, man. I want to make sure it's apples to apples when we're talking
Yes.
to the legislature about this. I don't have an argument on the 12.5 per
Mhm.
fiscal year if we think that we can spend that. And certainly the addition of up to 2 FTE to handle that, I don't think it's a bad idea either.
Chairman, and also on the skills development fund exceptional item, we have something that dual credit that's in here. And so making sure we're clear on that as well, the dual credit portion of it.
Well, isn't dual credit statutorily, is it 5% of the skills development fund allocation? Is that right? It's
I
some
believe that's
percent,
the
it's some
case,
statutory
right.
percentage.
Yeah,
of
it is,
the
it's a certain percentage, but just
correct.
making sure that we're set and understanding that is where I'm going.
5 or 10.
Mhm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
5%.
believe it's
Mary
5%.
York says it's 5%.
Okay.
Les
right.
did not shake his head, so I think that's probably accurate.
Don't be guessing now.
No, I think she knows. I think she's got her computer back there. Yeah, so and the addition of 12.5% would just be, you know, another 600,000 that could potentially go for dual credit, which I also think is a good program. So, okay. So I think we're in agreement here. I'm just going to biennial total 7.5 on pre-apprenticeship, 20 on IRAP, 15 on JET, 650,000 on civil rights, 35 million on childcare, and a total of what is that, 25 million on additional for skills development fund. How will we, I guess it's just the way we sort of restructure this a little bit to indicate that it's for skills and not for the whole skills budget item, which includes JET. We want to be
Yes.
extra clear on that, I think.
Correct. We'll go back through all, because typically what we'll use is these kind of summary documents, whether we're briefing LBB, the governor's office, or other legislators, that we'll clean up the language in this and make it as concise and to the point that we want, because that will become, in a sense, our briefing document. So we'll clean up the language and skills and review all of these to make sure that the language is accurate and reflects, you know, what we're asking for and why we're asking for it.
Okay, any objections?
None objections, no objections.
right.
We can go.
We need to order these.
That is correct.
All right.
Okay.
Got a couple ways we can go about this. Just to make this expedient. This is my thinking. This is just my reaction to this. I would probably advance childcare as the #1 priority on the exceptional items, simply because it enables us to pull down a large chunk of federal funding and get childcare for 13,000 more kids, which means that many more parents can go to work. I would probably be inclined to put the civil rights request, since that's a workload request and impacts people's rights. Probably put that in at second, and would after that, I think it becomes sort of a matter of interest. But I would advocate for 1 and 2 being childcare and civil rights in that order. But if there's an objection, we need to talk about it right now.
That's the 1 and 2 I had on my list.
I object.
Okay. Tell us your thoughts.
So my thoughts are big. Of course, I understand childcare, the value of childcare, and I also appreciate the money that the federal government has been giving us. I appreciate the work Brian Snoddy has done with civil rights. But I'm looking at opportunities here for us to do a really good job of marketing what this great agency has done for many years, and we continue to do. So my order was to, I do like the opportunity to increase the JET funding was one. I think of all the things we talk about, that's certainly one. I also like, obviously, I'm gonna support pre-apprenticeship as number 2. And then I was gonna choose childcare as number 3.
I'll tell you what, let me do this. Just so we can complete this discussion. I'll give you the order I had. I expect everybody's to be different. This is just to inform the discussion. Were it left up to me, and it's not, it's a consensus here, but, or certainly a majority. I would have childcare 1, civil rights 2, jet 3, pre-apprenticeship 4, IRAP 5, and skills 6. Skills goes 6 because I think that's our biggest reach. I think it's justifiable, but I think it's one we're kind of reaching for growth, and we need to explain that. I've said on childcare and civil rights why. Jet, I think we agree on, even if we have 3, it's my first sort of kind of operations deal. I think pre-apprenticeship is kind of key to building support there. IRAP would then come in behind pre-apprenticeship, and I would explain skills. That's how I would do it. Let's talk about it. Let me hear kind of your 1 through 6, and we'll see where we align and don't align.
Chairman, I'd be okay with childcare, civil rights being childcare 1, civil rights 2. But I would, again, I'm because of the interest and because of just the momentum we have now with the healthcare apprenticeship initiative that's going on and some of the other things we have, I would put pre-apprenticeship as number 3. I would put jet number 4, skills number 5.
Commissioner Demerson,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I mean, I'll give you a chance to calculate.
Yeah, no, okay. So you and I are pretty much in agreement. We just transposed one area. Childcare and civil rights 1 and 2, because they're staff recommendations, and I want to definitely push that out. For me, the JET program is number 3. And then because I represent the employers here in the state, I went with the industry recognized apprenticeship program being number 4, pre-apprenticeship program being number 5, and then the skills initiative being the last. I don't know if I have 6 items or.
There's supposed to be 6, so
Yeah, 6, okay.
you had childcare, civil rights, jet, and then 4th was
It was going to be the IRAP,
IRAP,
Mhm.
and then 5 pre-apprenticeship.
apprenticeship, and then JET 6.
Yeah, I think we do have those 2 inverted. I would have put pre-apprenticeship before them.
Mhm. And I'm,
That's
you know,
your-
and
that's
I'm, and I'm, and I'm okay either way. I love both of the programs, but I represent the employers. And I
No,
want
it's a
to
fair
make sure
point.
that that's there.
Very fair point.
Yeah.
Chairman, after listening to your and Commissioner Demerson's recommendation on the order, I will agree to your order.
All right, so the one I laid out,
Mhm,
so
the
the
one you
one
laid
I
out.
laid out was childcare, civil rights, jet, pre-apprenticeship, IRAP, and skills.
I can agree with
I
that.
would agree with that.
Mhm.
All right, staff, did you capture that?
We haven't.
Commissioner
agree.
Alvarez, if you
I'd agree with that.
make it, let's make a motion to, do we need to make a motion at this point since we agreed by acclamation, Mr. Troman?
Make
want me
the, make the motion and I'll second that, or Commissioner
Okay,
Demerson can.
so I move we approve the capital exceptional items as part of the 2024-2025 legislative appropriations request as presented by staff today. And then I move that we adopt the exceptional items as laid out by the commissioners. We had amended dollar amounts that we had an extensive discussion of, and those will be in the transcript. I stated those plainly at the end of the discussion. And the order in which we would do them, I stated plainly at the end of the discussion. That'll be in the transcript. That's my motion.
Second,
It's been
I
mo-
agree with that.
Been moved and seconded, and we're unanimous in the vote. We'll move to agenda item 11, TWC Rider Revisions Appropriations Request.
For the record, Chris Nelson, Chief Financial Officer again. The next the document lays out staff recommended rider revisions to our bill pattern as part of our LAR. Most of the changes reflect changes to the biennium years and strategy changes as TWC changes budget structure as part of our strategic plan submitted this past spring. Other key changes include removing Rider 3, so the UI program would use consistent authority to increase its federal funds found in Article 9 for all of, that's used for all other federal programs. Adding an industry-based certification advisory council to our bill pattern, so we may reimburse travel costs consistent with the intent of House Bill 3938 this past session. Removing the child care transferability rider, since all of our direct child care costs are now in one strategy since the strategy change in our strategic plan. Adding UB authority for the child care system replacement and VR system replacement systems due to the size and lengths of these IT projects. Requesting UB authority for the JET and skill strategies from the first year of the biennium to help ensure we commit all the funds for their intended purpose while also ensuring adequate timelines for procurement and contracting execution. And lastly, requesting 100% transferability between JET and skill strategies to ensure all funds are utilized in the event demand in one increases and or decreases in another, such as we saw during COVID. That concludes my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
Chairman, just for clarification, since we did ask for funding on the IRAPs, is this something we need to add to that on the UB authority in case we don't use it all? I'd be okay with that.
I don't know how to do that, Commissioner, on an exceptional item in terms of a rider request. Generally, riders deal with concrete items. We could put it in the exceptional item request.
I believe we could make and add that to the language, justification language of the exceptional item requesting the amount.
That would
and
be
if
the best way
approved,
to do it.
Okay,
additional
I'm fine with
Yeah.
that.
UB authority for that amount.
I'd be okay with that.
No
Mhm.
objection.
Okay.
No other further comments from here.
None here.
And is there any other questions or comments about rider revisions?
None here.
Is there, go ahead, Commissioner.
No. None.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the rider revisions as presented by staff.
Second.
It's been moved second. We're unanimous on that vote.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is agenda item 12, JET Advisory Board recommendations for FY 2022 grants.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Director Cerna. For the record, my name is Matt Snidecki, Program Manager for the Jobs and Education for Texans Program, Outreach and Employer Initiatives Division. The FY 2022 Jobs and Education for Texans request for applications were issued on March 17th, 2022 for grant awards for public colleges, public technical institutes, and public state colleges, and on April 20th, 2022 for grant awards to Texas Independent School Districts, Open Enrollment Charter Schools, and the Wyndham School District. 255 total applications were received, 48 applications from institutions of higher education, and 207 applications from open enrollment charter schools and school districts. On July 28th, 2022, the JET Advisory Board made the following recommendations to the Commission regarding the FY 2022 JET awards. To recommend the Commission to direct staff to move forward with awarding grants based on their final evaluation score. Staff seeks direction regarding JET awards for FY 2022 as recommended by the JET Advisory Board, and allows staff the ability to move down the list 50 points and above as funds become available during contract negotiations.
Any
I'm happy
comment-
to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions?
Chairman, I just have one comment.
Yes, sir.
It is great to see the reach and impact that these grants will have on training our future workforce. This program is one of many that illustrates the importance of TWC's involvement with youth initiatives.
Good work.
Mhm.
Point of clarification, people drop out, people decide not to proceed. Chris finds money in the budget sometimes, as all these things happen. Does our vote today give staff sufficient latitude that no matter the source of additional funds, if they have to move down, keeping that 50 point in mind, they can get any eligible applicant as long as the money lasts? And the advisory board's aware of that and approved the same. So is that correct? That's correct. All right. Do we have a motion on this issue?
Chairman, I accept and approve the JET Advisory Board recommendations concerning fiscal year 2022 grants to public junior colleges, public technical institutes, public state colleges, open enrollment charter schools, and school districts, and direct staff to award grants moving down the list of eligible applicants scoring 50 points and above as funds become available in contract negotiations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We're unanimous. Thank you. This is agenda item 13, JET Advisory Board recommendations for FY 2023 program funding and parameters.
Good morning again. For the record, Matt Snidecke, Program Manager for the Jobs and Educations for Texans Grant Program. TWC was appropriated $7.52 million for fiscal year 2023 for use by the Jobs and Education for Texans program. On July 28th, 2022, the JET Advisory Board met to discuss the program parameters and funding allocation for FY 23. At the July 28th meeting, the following recommendations were made to the commission regarding FY 23 program parameters and funding. The first would be funding allocation. That will be split 40% IHEs, 60% open enrollment charter schools and school districts. The second would be the minimum maximum grant amount. That is recommended to be set at 40,000 at the minimum and 350,000 as the maximum. The third would be the number of applications per eligible applicant. IHEs would be afforded one application per eligible applicant, as well as open enrollment charter schools and school districts receiving one application per eligible applicant. And number four would be the minimum point threshold at 50 points. Staff seeks direction regarding the adoption and implementation of the program parameters for FY 2023 as recommended by the JET Advisory Board.
Comments or questions?
None here, except thanks, Matt, for the great work you've done, you and your team.
All right, is there a motion?
Chairman, I move that we adopt and implement the program parameters for fiscal year 2023 as recommended by the JET Advisory Board.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We're unanimous.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt.
Has Matt been up here before?
What?
Has Matt
That's
been-
not his first time, no.
Oh, second-
Yeah.
Second.
He
time.
just had shorter hair.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't recognize him from the hairstyle, but yeah, he's been here before. so. Is there a legislative report today?
No, sir.
How about an executive director's report?
Also, no, sir.
Also, no. Is there any other order of business come before the commission?
Chairman, I'd like to acknowledge something that's taking place today. The 85th anniversary of the National Apprenticeship Act, which is also known as the Fitzgerald's Act, was enacted on August 16th, 1937, which established the nation's apprenticeship system, I should say. The Office of Apprenticeship will commemorate the 85th anniversary of the act to celebrate the success of registered apprenticeship over the past 85 years, while engaging the public and our stakeholders to share feedback on how we can continue to modernize, diversify, strengthen, and expand registered apprenticeship moving forward. The 85th anniversary celebratory activities will begin on August 16, 2022, and take place throughout the rest of the year to highlight the value of registered apprenticeship in building our economy, providing access to good quality jobs, advancing radical and gender equality, and supporting underserved communities. A couple of things I'd like to acknowledge. We are launching the Apprenticeship USA brand, host national online dialogue. And then, of course, we had our kickoff yesterday with the Department of Labor. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Awesome.
Congratulations on that. Chairman, I wanted to talk about an event or mention an event I attended last week in San Antonio with the Alamo Workforce Solutions Alamo team. They actually are partnering with the food bank, and they've placed an office inside the food bank, which is very creative, first of its kind. And Adrian Lopez and the team kicked that initiative off, and it was well received. I have a number of individuals coming in looking for food. And so if you're in that position, you may be in a position of needing access to a job or a career as well. And well received with the mayor, state senator in attendance, and then the congressman's office as well. But wanted to applaud the efforts of Adrian and his team with that initiative.
Absolutely. Any other order? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn, and we are adjourned.